The massive space station hung in the void like a metal flower. Its countless arms stretched out into the darkness, each one home to different alien species. This was the Grand Assembly, the heart of the Galactic Confederation. For 3,000 years, peace had ruled here. Today, that peace was dying. Ambassador 9 stood before the great circular chamber. Her crystal body caught the light from 100 different suns, casting rainbow patterns across the walls. Around her, representatives from 847 different worlds watched in silence. Some had fur, some had scales, some were made of pure energy. All of them were afraid. "The Devourer swarm has taken the Helios system," 9 announced. Her voice rang like broken glass. 12 billion souls, gone in 3 days. A ripple of fear passed through the assembly. The delegate, a creature that looked like a walking tree, swayed with grief. The Helios worlds had been colonies. "Our fleets cannot stop them," continued 9. "The swarm learns from every battle. They adapt faster than we can change our tactics. Admiral's Third Fleet tried new weapons yesterday. Today, the swarm is immune to them." Elder rose from his seat. The ancient being was older than the Confederation itself. His body was made of living metal that had turned dark with age. When he spoke, everyone listened. "I have seen many wars," said slowly. "I was there when the Confederation was born from the ashes of the last great war. But this enemy is different. They do not want territory or resources. They consume everything and move on. They are like a fire that burns across the galaxy." The chamber fell silent. If was scared, then there truly was no hope. "However," the old being continued, "there may be one option left, a desperate one but perhaps our only chance." All eyes turned to him, called up an ancient hologram. Strange symbols appeared in the air, written in a language most had forgotten. "These are records from the early days of our galaxy," he said, "before the Confederation brought peace. They speak of a lost species, one that vanished long ago." The hologram showed a bipedal creature. It stood upright on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and a head with strange, small eyes. It looked weak compared to the mighty species in the chamber. "They called themselves humans," explained. "The records about them make no sense. They were said to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy, yet also the most peaceful. They could unite to face any threat but fought terrible wars among themselves." Counselor, a massive creature with 6 arms, laughed. "You waste our time with fairy tales, old one. Look at these creatures. They are tiny, weak. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities." "Yet the records claim they defeated the Silicon Empire," replied calmly. "The same empire that took us 50 years to overcome, they crushed in 6 months. "Impossible," scoffed. "The Silicon Empire had ships the size of moons. Their warriors were living metal." "The records do not lie," insisted. "They say humans thought differently than other species. Where we saw problems, they saw opportunities. Where we found defeat, they discovered new ways to win." 9 studied the hologram carefully. "When did they disappear?" 5,000 years ago. They from galactic civilization during the War of Purple Suns. The records say they grew disgusted with the violence and went home. Their last message was strange." Paused. "They said they would return when the galaxy grew up." The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates argued the humans were myths. Others wondered if they had ever existed at all. A few thought they might have evolved beyond the need for physical bodies. "Even if they existed," said the aquatic delegate through her water tank, "they are gone, dead for thousands of years. This helps us nothing." But 9 was thinking. She had spent years studying the old records. Too many pieces fit together for humans to be complete fiction. "What if they are not dead?" she asked quietly. The chamber grew still. "What if they simply left, went somewhere far away?" 9 continued. "The galaxy is vast. There are whole sectors we have never explored." Elder nodded slowly. "The thought had occurred to me. If humans still exist, if we could find them, perhaps they could help us understand how to fight the swarm. You want us to waste time searching for ghosts while the swarm destroys more worlds? Demanded. What choice do we have? Nine shot back. Our fleets are broken. Our weapons are useless. In 3 months the swarm will reach the core worlds. In 6 months they will be here. The truth of her words settled over the assembly like a heavy blanket. They had tried everything. Conventional warfare had failed. Diplomatic contact was impossible with the swarm. Advanced weapons only taught the enemy new ways to fight. I propose we send search teams to the outer galaxy, Nine said. Let them look for any sign of human civilization. It may be our last hope. The vote was close. Many thought it was foolish to chase legends while the galaxy burned, but fear won over logic. The motion passed by 12 votes. As the assembly broke up, delegates returned to their ships with heavy hearts. Some would go home to prepare their worlds for invasion. Others would join the search fleets, looking for a species that might not exist. Elder remained in his seat long after the others had left. He stared at the hologram of the human, turning it slowly in the air. Such a simple creature. No claws, no fangs, no thick hide. Just smooth skin and those strange, small eyes. What made you so special? He whispered to the image. The hologram offered no answer, but somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, something was watching. Something that had been waiting 5,000 years for the galaxy to call for help. The search was about to begin, and perhaps, if they were very lucky, they would find more than just legends in the void. Doctor brushed the dust from the ancient metal plate with delicate care. Her fingers were perfectly suited for this work, long, thin, and sensitive enough to feel the smallest detail. Around her, the ruins of the dead world stretched into the distance. This planet had no name anymore. The star charts called it designation 7742X, but knew its secret. This had once been a human world. She had spent 15 years studying sites like this. Ancient cities that didn't match any known architecture. Tools designed for creatures with 5 fingers instead of 4, 6, or 8. Weapons that seemed too simple, yet showed signs of incredible effectiveness. The other archaeologists called her obsessed. They said she was wasting her career chasing ghosts, but knew the truth. Humans had been real, and they had been important. Professor, her assistant, scuttled over on his 6 legs. The young was eager but clumsy. I think I found something in the lower chambers. Followed him down the stone steps. The building they were exploring had been some kind of government center. The humans had built it to last, with thick walls and deep foundations. Even after 5,000 years, it remained mostly intact. Here, pointed with one of his smaller arms. The wall scanner shows a hidden room behind this section. Ran her hands over the smooth stone. There, a slight difference in texture. She pressed carefully, and a section of wall slid away with surprising smoothness. Cool air flowed out of the dark space beyond, shined her light inside and gasped. The room was filled with strange devices. Screens lined the walls, dark and silent. In the center sat a chair designed for the human form, a backrest for their straight spines, armrests for their long limbs. But what caught her attention was the small, glowing crystal on the main desk. It pulsed with a soft blue light, as if it had been waiting for them. A data crystal, whispered, but it's still active after all these years. How is that possible? Carefully lifted the crystal. It was warm to the touch and surprisingly heavy. Human technology was always surprising. It looked simple but worked in ways that seemed impossible. We need to get this back to the ship, she said. I want to analyze it properly. 3 hours later, sat in her laboratory aboard the research vessel Scholarly Pursuit. The human data crystal was connected to her most advanced computers. Slowly, carefully, she began the translation process. The first files were routine records of harvests, weather patterns, local government meetings. boring but valuable. They showed humans living normal lives, raising families, building communities. They seemed so ordinary. Then she found the military files. Impossible, she breathed as the translations appeared on her screen. According to these records, humans had fought a war against the Empire. Knew that they were huge, powerful creatures with natural armor and devastating weapons. Each warrior was worth 10 regular soldiers. Yet the humans had won. Not just won, but completely destroyed the military in a series of battles that made no tactical sense. In one engagement, a human commander had divided his forces into small groups and attacked from 17 different directions at once. Military doctrine said this was suicide. Divided forces were weak forces, but somehow it had worked. The confused by the chaos had been defeated completely. In another battle, humans had retreated for 6 days straight, letting the enemy follow them deeper into human space. Then, when they thought they were winning, the humans had suddenly turned and fought with incredible fury. The enemy had been caught completely off guard and destroyed. They fight like, one report stated. They ignore all logic. When they should retreat, they attack. When they should attack, they disappear. We cannot predict their actions because they make no sense. But that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was what happened after the war. According to the records, the humans could have conquered the Empire completely. Their fleet was broken, their worlds defenseless. Instead, the humans had offered peace. They had helped rebuild cities. They had shared technology and medicine. Within 10 years, they had become humanity's closest allies. "This is impossible," muttered. "No species acts this way. You either conquer your enemies or you don't fight them at all." She dug deeper into the files. More battles, more impossible victories. Humans fighting the Crystal Collective, the Machine Republic, the hive minds of Sector 9. Each war was different, but the pattern was the same. Humans would fight with seemingly random tactics that somehow worked perfectly. Then they would offer friendship to the very species they had just defeated. The records spoke of human diplomats who could convince natural enemies to work together. Human engineers who could fix problems everyone else said were impossible. Human doctors who would treat anyone, even former enemies. But they also spoke of human weapons that could crack planets. Human soldiers who never retreated from any fight. Human fleets that could appear anywhere and disappear just as quickly. It was like reading about two different species, one peaceful and helpful, one terrible and dangerous. Yet they were clearly the same people. The final files made everything even more confusing. They described the War of Purple Suns, the last great conflict before the humans disappeared. It had been a civil war among several species, with ancient grudges driving everyone to greater and greater violence. The humans had tried to stop it. They had offered to mediate to find peaceful solutions. When that failed, they had chosen sides, not based on politics or profit, but on who was protecting innocent civilians. They had won the war in 3 months, but the cost had been terrible. Entire species had been nearly wiped out. Beautiful worlds had been turned into wasteland. The humans had been forced to use weapons that violated their own moral codes. The final entry was from Admiral Sarah of the human colonial fleet. It was addressed to the entire galaxy. "We came to the stars seeking friendship and knowledge. We found only war and hatred. We tried to bring peace but succeeded only in becoming the most feared species in the galaxy. This is not who we want to be. We are going home. We will seal our borders and have no contact with the galactic community. Do not follow us. Do not seek us out. We will return only when this galaxy learns to solve its problems without destroying itself. Until then, we will watch from afar and hope that someday you will grow beyond your need for war." Sat back in her chair, stunned. The humans hadn't died out or evolved beyond physical form. They had chosen to leave. They had exiled themselves because they believed the galaxy wasn't ready for them. And now the Devourer swarm was coming. The galaxy was facing its greatest threat ever. The Confederation's fleets were broken. Their weapons were useless. Perhaps it was time to ask the humans to come home. But first, they had to find them. Somewhere out in the vast darkness, beyond the known star charts, humanity waited. The question was whether they would answer when the galaxy finally called for help. Began composing her report for the Galactic Council. Everything was about to change. The sensor operator's voice cracked with confusion. "Admiral, you need to see this. Unknown ships approaching the Nexus border." Admiral Vextai of the Confederation Home Fleet studied the display with his 4 eyes. 12 ships hung in space at the edge of the system. They were unlike anything in the Confederation database. The vessels looked almost alive. Their hulls curved and flowed like water frozen in time. No sharp angles or brutal weapon ports. They seemed to drift rather than fly, moving with an easy grace that made the massive Confederation dreadnoughts look clumsy. "Size analysis?" Vextai asked. "The largest is roughly 4 kilometers long. The smallest about 1 kilometer," replied the sensor operator. "Minimal energy signatures. I'm reading advanced stealth systems, but they're not trying to hide." Admiral Vextai felt a chill run through his scales. 12 ships. The Confederation had over 3,000 vessels defending this sector, and they were losing badly against the swarm. What could 12 unknown ships possibly do? "Sir, incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. "They're using standard galactic frequencies." "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and a figure appeared that made every being on the bridge gasp. It was the creature from the ancient, the legendary human. She sat in a chair that perfectly fit her strange, straight-backed form. Her skin was brown and smooth, her hair black with streaks of gray. Most alien of all were her eyes, small and round, but filled with an intelligence that seemed to see right through the screen. "Greetings, Confederation forces," she said in perfectly clear galactic standard. "I am Admiral Sarah of the United Earth Systems Colonial Fleet. We received your call for help." Admiral Vextai found his voice. "Admiral, I am Admiral Vextai of the Confederation Home Fleet. We weren't sure if humans still existed." The human smiled, showing her small, flat teeth. "We exist. We've been watching from the outer spiral. Your message reached us through the quantum relay network. Something about an invasion you can't stop." "The Devourer swarm," Vextai explained. "They consume everything. Our fleets cannot defeat them. They adapt to our weapons too quickly." Admiral's expression grew serious. "We know about the swarm. We've been tracking their approach for several months. Nasty business. Hive mind, complete resource consumption, exponential reproduction rate. Very unpleasant." "Then you understand why we need help," Vextai said desperately. "But with respect, Admiral, you only have 12 ships. The swarm has destroyed fleets 10 times that size." The human smile returned, but this time it seemed different, dangerous. "Admiral, you've forgotten what war really means. We haven't." Before Vextai could ask what she meant, another voice interrupted from the communications station. "Admiral, swarm scout force detected in the outer system. 47 vessels, moving fast toward Colony World." Vextai felt his blood freeze. Was home to 6 million civilians. His fleet was too far away to intercept in time. "Request permission to engage," Admiral said calmly. "Admiral, there are 47 swarm ships. They're heading for a populated world. Every minute counts." "I understand the situation," replied. "Captain Martinez, take the dancing bear and clean up this pest problem." On the secondary screen, another human appeared. This one was younger, with darker skin and bright white teeth. "Roger that, Admiral. One pest control operation coming up." Vextai watched in amazement as the smallest human ship broke away from the formation. It moved toward the swarm force with casual confidence, like a predator approaching prey. "Admiral, that's 1 ship against 47. This is suicide. Admiral Vextai said gently, "Please observe and learn." The human frigate Dancing Bear reached the swarm scouts at the edge of gravity well. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space lit up with weapons fire. But it wasn't like any battle Vextai had ever seen. The human ship moved like a living thing, twisting and turning in ways that should have been impossible. Its weapons fired in patterns that seemed random but somehow hit every target. The swarm ships tried to adapt, changing their tactics as they always did. But the human ship changed too, faster than the swarm could learn. It fought like nothing Vextai had ever witnessed, not following any tactical manual but improvising constantly. "How are they doing that?" his weapons officer whispered. The swarm tried to surround the human ship. The Dancing Bear suddenly accelerated straight into their formation, firing in all directions. 3 swarm vessels exploded. The human ship spun around and destroyed 4 more before they could react. "They're using chaos tactics," Admiral explained, as if discussing the weather. "The swarm relies on predictable patterns to adapt. We don't use patterns, we improvise." A group of swarm ships tried to ram the human frigate. At the last second, the Dancing Bear dropped to minimum power and drifted sideways. The swarm ships crashed into each other. Human weapons finished off the survivors. In 8 minutes, it was over. 47 swarm ships had been reduced to debris. The human frigate had taken some damage but was still fully operational. "Pest control complete," Captain Martinez reported cheerfully. "Is secure, heading back to the formation." Admiral Vextai stared at his displays. His best tactical computers had predicted the human ship would be destroyed in less than 2 minutes. Instead, it had achieved the impossible. "How?" he finally managed to ask. Admiral leaned forward in her chair. "Admiral, your species fight by the rules. You follow proven tactics. You use logical strategies. The swarm beats you because logic is predictable." She gestured to something off-screen. "Humans don't fight logically. We fight creatively. We do things that make no sense, that violate every rule of warfare, and somehow we make it work." "That's impossible," Vextai protested. "Admiral, my weapons officer used to be a musician. My engineer writes poetry in her spare time. My tactical officer grew up on a farm. They don't think like soldiers. They think like humans." Stood up from her chair. Through the screen, Vextai could see other humans moving around the bridge. They worked with an easy efficiency that combined strict discipline with casual familiarity. It was like watching a family that happened to operate a warship. "We're going to help you stop the swarm," continued. "But you need to understand something. We don't fight your way. We don't follow your rules. We're going to do things that seem crazy, stupid, or impossible. Trust us anyway." "But 12 ships," Vextai said weakly. Admiral's smile was sharp as a blade. "Admiral, we're not just 12 ships. We're 12 ships full of humans. The species that once made the entire galaxy afraid to fight us. We've had 5,000 years to get better at war." She paused. "The swarm is about to learn why the old galaxy used to tell stories about us in the dark." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Vextai staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked in stunned silence. In the distance, 12 human ships waited like sleeping predators. The devourer swarm was coming, confident in their power and their ability to adapt. They had never faced humans before. The galaxy was about to remember why humanity had once been legend. The devourer swarm arrived at the Nexus system like a plague of metal locusts. 2,000 ships of various sizes, all black and angular, moved in perfect formation. They had consumed 17 star systems on their way here. They were hungry for more. Admiral Vextai watched from his flagship as the enemy fleet took position. Behind him, the combined Confederation fleet numbered over 4,000 vessels. It was the largest force ever assembled in galactic history. It wouldn't be enough, they all knew it. Human fleet moving to engagement position, reported the sensor operator. 12 ships, 12 tiny ships against an enemy that had destroyed everything in its path. Admiral Vextai almost felt sorry for the humans. They had come so far just to die with the rest of them. Admiral's voice came over the communication system. Confederation fleet, this is Admiral. We're going to try something new today. Please observe our tactics carefully. You may want to copy them. Admiral, Vextai replied, our battle computers show the swarm will overwhelm us in 17 minutes. Perhaps we should coordinate our attack. Thank you, Admiral, but we have our own plan. Just watch and learn. The human ships began to spread out in a pattern that made no sense. They scattered across the battlefield like leaves in the wind, with no clear formation or strategy. What are they doing? Asked Vextai's tactical officer. They're dividing their forces. The swarm will destroy them one by one. But the swarm seemed confused too. Their perfect formation wavered as they tried to understand the human deployment. Hive minds liked order. The human chaos was bothering them. Suddenly, music began playing on all frequencies. Not just any music, this was something wild and energetic, with a driving beat that seemed to pulse through space itself. The humans were broadcasting at maximum power. What is this? Demanded the swarm's lead voice. It was the first time anyone had heard them speak. Stop this noise. That's rock and roll, Admiral replied cheerfully. We thought you might enjoy it. This particular song is called Born to be Wild. The music got louder. The first human ship to attack was the destroyer Defiant, commanded by Captain. Instead of following any logical battle plan, she aimed straight for the center of the swarm formation and accelerated to maximum speed. She's going to ram them, breathed Vextai's weapons officer. This is suicide. But at the last moment, the Defiant spun sideways and unleashed every weapon it had. Missiles, particle beams, plasma cannons, all firing at once while the ship rotated like a spinning top. The swarm ships tried to target her, but she was moving too unpredictably. Their weapons, designed to hit logical attack patterns, couldn't track something so chaotic. 3 swarm vessels exploded. The Defiant somehow twisted through the debris and kept firing. Now that's what I call a dance, Captain shouted over the music. The other human ships joined the battle, each one using completely different tactics. The cruiser Indomitable Spirit fought like a boxer, closing fast and hitting hard before backing away. The frigate Lucky Strike darted around the battlefield like an angry wasp, stinging targets and disappearing before they could respond. The strangest was the heavy destroyer Hammer of Dawn. Its captain, a man named Jackson Cole, had his ship retreating while firing backwards. When swarm ships pursued, they ran straight into traps that Cole had somehow predicted they would spring. How is he doing that? Vextai demanded. The human commander seems to understand swarm psychology, his tactical computer replied. He is manipulating their behavior patterns. But it was more than that. The humans weren't just fighting the swarm's ships, they were fighting the swarm's minds. They did things that confused the hive intelligence. They used tactics that made no sense but somehow worked. When the swarm tried to adapt to human chaos, the humans became more chaotic. When the swarm tried to impose order, the humans destroyed that order with precise strikes. And all the while, the music kept playing. This is impossible, the swarm voice complained. These tactics violate all principles of warfare. How can disorder defeat order? Because, Admiral replied, order is predictable, disorder is not. The tide of battle began to turn. Confederation ships, watching the humans fight, started copying their tactics. Instead of neat formations, they spread out. Instead of following battle plans, they improvised. Admiral Vextai found himself grinning as he watched his own fleet learn to fight like humans. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. The decisive moment came when a group of swarm dreadnoughts surrounded the human flagship Indomitable Spirit. They had Admiral trapped. Their victory seemed certain. "All ships, this is," the Admiral announced calmly. "Play track 7. The music changed. This new song was slower, more emotional. But underneath the melody was something else, a message that spoke to every thinking being in the fleet. "What is this?" asked Vextai. "It's called Amazing Grace," replied. "We play it for our honored dead." Then the Indomitable Spirit did something incredible. Instead of trying to escape, it charged straight toward the largest swarm dreadnought. But it wasn't a suicide run, it was something far more clever. The human flagship opened all of its cargo bays and began dumping everything into space. Spare parts, supplies, even furniture, all of it flying out behind the ship like a metal comet tail. The swarm dreadnought fired, but its weapons hit the debris cloud instead of the ship. The explosions created a smokescreen that blinded every sensor in the area. When the smoke cleared, the Indomitable Spirit was somehow behind the swarm formation. Its weapons destroyed 3 dreadnoughts before they realized what had happened. "How?" Vextai whispered. "Misdirection," explained. "We learned it from magicians." The swarm fleet began to retreat. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something they couldn't understand or adapt to. The humans fought without logic, without predictable patterns. They used emotion instead of calculation. They turned chaos into a weapon. But Admiral wasn't finished. "All ships pursue the enemy. Don't let them escape to consume another world." The combined Human Confederation fleet chased the swarm across 3 star systems. Every time the enemy tried to regroup, human ships appeared from unexpected directions. Every time they tried new tactics, the humans countered with something even more unpredictable. In the end, the swarm did something no one had ever seen them do before. They surrendered. "We cannot fight this," their leader admitted. "These humans use madness as a weapon. We cannot adapt to insanity." Admiral's response was typically human. "We're not insane, we're just creative. There's a difference." She paused. "We'll accept your surrender, but there are conditions. You will leave this galaxy and never return. You will release any prisoners you have taken, and you will swear by whatever you consider sacred that you will never again consume innocent worlds." "And if we refuse?" Smile was visible even through the static of long-range transmission. "Then we'll show you what humans do when we get really creative." The swarm agreed to all conditions. As the enemy fleet limped away toward deep space, Admiral Vextai finally understood what made humans special. They didn't just fight battles, they fought ideas. They didn't just defeat ships, they defeated the minds that controlled those ships. And they did it all while playing music that somehow made everything seem possible. "Admiral," he said over the communication channel, "thank you, but I have to ask, how did you know you could win?" The human admiral leaned back in her chair. "Admiral, we didn't know. That's what made it work. When you're not sure you can win, you try harder. When you try harder, you find solutions you never knew existed." She gestured to her crew. "My people have been fighting impossible odds for 50,000 years. We've learned that impossible just means you haven't been creative enough yet." The galaxy had been saved, and everyone had learned something important about the power of thinking differently. The age of human legend was beginning again. 3 weeks after the Battle of Nexus, the Grand Assembly was packed than anyone could remember. Representatives from every member world had come to witness history. In the center of the Great Chamber, Admiral Sarah sat in a specially built chair designed for human anatomy. She looked small compared to the massive aliens around her, but everyone in the room remembered what those 12 ships had accomplished. Size, they had learned, was not the same as power. Elder rose to address the assembly. The ancient being moved slowly, but his voice carried clearly through the chamber. 3 weeks ago we faced extinction, he began. The Devourer swarm had destroyed our fleets, consumed our worlds, and driven us to despair. Today, we are free. The enemy has been defeated and driven from our galaxy. A wave of cheers and various alien celebrations swept through the chamber, waited for quiet before continuing. This victory belongs to humanity. 12 ships succeeded where thousands had failed. Admiral, the Galactic Confederation offers humanity full membership with senior status. You would have voting rights on all major decisions and control over 3 entire sectors. Admiral smiled politely. That's very generous, Elder, but I'm afraid we must decline. The chamber fell silent. This was not what anyone had expected. Ambassador 9 leaned forward. Admiral, perhaps you don't understand. We're offering humanity a place among the galaxy's leaders. Why would you refuse? Because we've been leaders before, replied. 5,000 years ago, we were one of the major galactic powers. We had vast fleets, controlled dozens of systems, and influenced the politics of hundreds of worlds. She stood and activated a holographic display. It showed star maps from the ancient past human territory marked in blue, stretching across significant portions of the galaxy. We were strong, we were influential, and we nearly destroyed everything we touched. The hologram changed, showing the final battles of the War of Purple Suns. Planets burned, fleets clashed in desperate fury, entire species fought to extinction. We didn't start that war, continued, but we ended it. The cost was terrible. Beautiful worlds turned to ash, ancient civilizations wiped out, all because the galaxy couldn't solve its problems without violence. Elder nodded slowly. The records speak of humanity's withdrawal. You chose exile rather than continue fighting. We chose wisdom over power, corrected gently. We realized that our strength was part of the problem. When humans are involved in galactic politics, everyone either wants to ally with us or fight us. Either way, it leads to bigger wars, not smaller ones. Counselor, the 6-armed delegate, gestured with frustration. But you saved us. Surely that proves you belong here. Admiral's expression grew thoughtful. We saved you because we could leave when the job was done. If we joined your government, we couldn't leave. We'd be committed to every conflict, every decision, every mistake. Eventually, that would corrupt us. She pulled up another hologram, this one showing current human space. It was vast, spreading through the outer spiral arms where few other species had explored. Humanity has spent 5,000 years building something different, she explained. We have colonies on 10,000 worlds. Our population is in the hundreds of billions. We've developed technologies you can't imagine and solved problems you don't know exist. The chamber buzzed with amazement. Humanity was far larger than anyone had suspected. But more importantly, continued, we've learned to live with ourselves. We've built a civilization based on cooperation instead of competition. We've found ways to disagree without declaring war. We've become the species we always wanted to be. Ambassador 9 asked the question everyone was thinking. If you won't join us, what do you propose? Admiral's smile was warm and genuine. Partnership, not membership, partnership. We'll establish diplomatic stations in your territory. We'll set up trade routes and cultural exchange programs. We'll even provide military assistance when you face threats you can't handle. But, she held up a warning finger, we won't get involved in your internal politics. We won't take sides in your disputes. We won't help you fight each other. If you want human help, you have to solve human problems, threats to innocent life, natural disasters, external invasions. Elder considered this carefully, and if we refuse these terms, then we'll leave again, replied simply. We came because you needed help. When you no longer need help, we'll go home. Our isolation wasn't a punishment, it was a choice. We're happy to keep making that choice. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Some delegates wanted to accept immediately. Others worried about humanity's conditions. A few suggested trying to force humans to stay. That last group fell silent when Admiral quietly mentioned that humanity's current fleet numbered over 50,000 ships. In the end, the vote was unanimous. The Galactic Confederation would accept humanity's partnership on human terms. 6 months later, Doctor stood in the newly opened Human Cultural Center on Nexus Station. Around her, beings from dozens of species studied human art, literature, and history. "It's amazing," said her assistant, reading a human book about something called democracy. "They've tried so many different ways to organize society." Nodded, watching a group of children play a human game called soccer. They seemed to understand it better than their parents did. "That's what makes them special," she said. "They never stop experimenting, never stop trying new things." Near the center's main entrance, a human diplomat named Ambassador Williams was mediating a dispute between the Silicon Collective and the Crystal Empire. Both sides had been fighting over mining rights for decades. "Have you considered time-sharing?" Williams suggested. "The Silicon Collective mines for 6 months, then the Crystal Empire gets 6 months. Both sides profit, nobody fights." The solution was so simple that both sides stared at him in amazement. Why had no one thought of that before? The answer, realized, was that humans thought differently. Where other species saw problems, humans saw puzzles to solve. Where others saw enemies, humans saw potential friends. Where others saw limitations, humans saw opportunities. In his private study, aboard the human flagship, Admiral was finishing her daily log entry. Personal log, day 200 since return to Confederation space. The partnership is working better than expected. We've helped resolve 43 disputes, provided disaster relief to 18 worlds, and established trade agreements that benefit everyone involved. She paused, looking out at the stars through her window. "Some of the crew ask if we'll ever come back to stay. I don't think so. The galaxy still has too much growing up to do, but for the first time in 5,000 years, I think it's learning." Closed the log and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new ways to help. But tonight, she could rest knowing that humanity had chosen correctly. They had returned not as conquerors or rulers, but as friends. Not to stay, but to help. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. In the end, that made all the difference. Far away, on the edge of human space, construction continued on the deep space monitoring stations. Humanity would keep watch over the galaxy, ready to help when needed, prepared to defend when threatened. But they would do it on their own terms, in their own way, as they always had. The galaxy had its guardians back, and this time both sides were wise enough to keep it that way. The age of partnership had begun, and everyone was better for it.